Let's call this meeting to order. Notice of an open work session of the City Council of North Kansas City, Missouri, July 3rd, 2018. Eric?
Thank you, sir. Tonight, for tonight's work session, we actually have two items. The first one is a municipal code audit regarding bicycling in North Kansas City. And to introduce the topic, I'll turn this over to our Community Development Director, Sarah Copeland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So a few months ago, as we were starting to look ahead towards having some new bicycle facilities in the city opening up this year, we got to thinking about enforcement issues that we might start to encounter as these facilities are opened. And at the time, my thought was really, we know that we don't have a municipal ordinance that prohibits a car from driving in a bike lane, because today we don't have any bike lanes. Well, we have very short bike lanes open on Diamond Parkway. But that was an issue that I thought, well, this is definitely something that we're going to want to think about. But we didn't know what we didn't know at the time. I was thinking there are probably things in our ordinance that are out of date or that aren't included because we didn't have these types of bicycle facilities. What is it that we need to do to modernize our code? And so we have been working with Bike Walk KC. They're a local nonprofit that focuses on bicycling and pedestrian advocacy to help us do a code audit of the municipal code. So we have Eric Bunch and Thomas Moorfield from Bike Walk KC with us tonight. They're local experts in what municipalities could and should be doing to encourage biking and walking in their communities. So they reviewed our municipal code and provided us with a lot of suggestions and best practices. Chief Beamer and I worked with them to review those and ask questions and pose what ifs and talk about what we thought would be best for the city from an enforcement point of view. And what's before you tonight is part of the outcome of those discussions. These are amendments just focused on Title 10 in the municipal code. They also made some suggestions about Title 12, which is about streets, alleys, and public places, and Title 17 for the zoning ordinance that we have deferred to consider at some point in the future. Right now, we're just focused on what are best practices for moving forward to ensure that we can make sure that vehicles and drivers and people on bikes, people who are walking, are all safe and protected in the city of North Kansas City. So we provided you with both a topical review and another handout that shows potential amendments to the ordinance with strike through and underline showing what would be deleted and added. We are going to walk through the topical section to discuss this by topics so that we can talk about why they're making the recommendations that they're making and what questions or concerns you might have in these different topics. So with that said, I will let, which one of you? I will let Eric Bunch start our discussion, and the first topic here is definitions. And I will also pull this up on the screen if that helps us as we go through this discussion.
All right. City Council, thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Eric Bunch. I'm the Policy Director at Bike Walk KC. And I was the primary person to do the work on this audit, and it was really exciting for us to do. It was exciting to see such commitment from a local municipality on this very issue. And so Sarah did a really good job of kind of explaining our focus on this and really why we wanted to do it. So I wanted to drill down just a little bit about the actual some of the recommendations we made for the language. And so I'm actually taking it a little bit different direction and looking straight at the language that's recommended, the strike through. So the document here that shows all of the green text and all that stuff. So kind of taking a step back and talking about a little bit more about the why. You'll notice the first section is definitions, and so that was the first place where we really looked at the traffic code. And ways that we could ensure that there's a little bit more bicycle pedestrian friendliness, and this was really important as we went further into the code to maybe clearly define these things. And so I would say that in the definition section, it really is three different reasons why we made these recommendations. One was to kind of address the need to regulate new and emerging technologies. Prime example of that is the motorized or electric assisted bicycle. That's a technology that has existed for a while, but it really has become a lot more commonplace. So bicycles that are equipped with a motor to add a little bit of extra power for an individual. It's an emerging technology that's really opening up bicycling to really a new audience in a way that wasn't possible and just a few years ago. And so there's also a need, though, to ensure safety of other street users, or in the case of a bike path or a trail or even a sidewalk, clearly defining where they can be and what is the sort of the upper limit. And so we looked at some best practice and found, I think, a pretty good dividing line, a good balance between encouraging this new technology but ensuring that it's governed both physically and in law in a way that ensures safety as well. And so you'll see some definitions there, and also, so then the second one was just sort of tightening up some of the definitions or adding definitions that really needed to be there. For example, a wheelchair user was not actually clearly defined, and it was not a pedestrian. The definition of pedestrian did not include a wheelchair user, so we wanted to clear that up and include that in. So there are a few examples of that where the language just wasn't there, the definition wasn't there, and so we wanted to make sure that was there. And then the third was actually ascribing new protections to folks who are outside of a vehicle on streets and sidewalks. And so that it comes in under this vulnerable road user, which is becoming a national best practice both in cities and states to kind of provide extra protection for those folks who are not within the confines of the protection of a steel cage, as it were, for vehicles. So moving on to the next sections, and you'll see that the definitions really often tie right into the other changes that we made here. But you'll see 1020-95 is a new section called vulnerable road users. So that's where we talk about safe passing distance when bicycles are in the street, or in the case where there is no sidewalk and a pedestrian has to be in the street, or a wheelchair user has to be in the street, talking about passing safely and providing a safe berth when vehicles pass them. The next one was driving in a bicycle lane. Surprisingly, a lot of municipalities around here don't have this yet, because bicycle lanes in many cities in the metro are pretty new. We've really just now started adding a lot of those, and this was probably the impetus of this whole endeavor, was that there wasn't a clear prohibition on driving a car in a bicycle lane. But we also excluded bicycles from this, because bicycles in some cases are actually vehicles, but in other cases, we talked a bit about excluding in this section and excluding certain users, so that we didn't prevent, say, a person in a wheelchair when they're, in some cases, and there's not an example of this right now, but we've seen where cities have a place with no sidewalk, but a bike lane is a really suitable alternative for someone in a wheelchair who has no other access. It's a safer place. So we didn't want to exclude a person in a power wheelchair from being able to use a bike lane. So we clearly defined that driving in a bicycle lane in a car is illegal. Then kind of jumping next to the next section, 1040, the pedestrian section. This actually is kind of a mix of tightening up the language and kind of creating some new safety. This falls in line, what we added here falls in line with national best practice. We borrowed examples from other cities and states. The language is very similar to the state. So the first thing we did was that we brought the North Kansas City Code up to the same level as the state of Missouri. So we felt that was kind of a good first step. But then we actually looked at some other examples out there, and the state of Minnesota and the city of Austin, Texas. We kind of used a mix of those two to really, I think, create a very good language on protecting pedestrians when crossing the street. So it's about crosswalks and how drivers should yield to pedestrians. So I think what we did here was really create a good ordinance that would help further protect pedestrians. Then in the section on parking, there was not a prohibition parking in a bike lane, and this is pretty common in the metro area, but we wanted to make sure that was included, so we just added an extra line within a bike lane, no parking within a bike lane. Jumping ahead to chapter 1060, bicycles. We actually removed this definition section simply because it was in our conversations, we realized this is really redundant. We'll just make sure that all of these definitions are included in the Title 10 definition section and 10.4.10. And so we removed those definitions, but then we talked a lot about bicycles required to ride to the right, riding to abreast. So we brought all of that up to kind of the national best practice of, a bicyclist needs to ride as far right as is safe or as is practicable. The reason for that is to preserve flow of traffic. However, we described that there are times in which a bicyclist may be riding farther away to avoid a hazard. Those things we cleared up a little bit more, and again, we brought it in line with a lot of the national best practice. Another one that you may find interesting or want to discuss in greater detail is one section was actually, or one part was talking about use of bicycles on the sidewalks, and it actually had a very specific reference. It had really specific streets and locations, and so what we did was we removed that because we felt like giving a little bit more discretion to either staff or city council on just simply posting a sign is now what is required. So if you don't want bicyclists riding on a certain trail or on a certain sidewalk, a sign could be posted to prevent that, to prohibit bicycle riding on the sidewalk or on that trail. So just a general kind of overhaul of this section that we really is ensuring that bicycles have a lot of protections, but also it's encouraging more cyclists by not relegating them to dangerous situations, or it's also providing them some extra encouragement, I think, to get on a bicycle. So that's kind of the high-level overview of the changes that we've suggested with Title 10, and I would be glad to talk about it in greater detail or answer any questions. Yes?
When we're talking about bike lanes, now, is that a dedicated bike lane, or like we've got a lot of bike lanes on our regular streets here? Mm-hmm. Now,
yeah.
do all the rules apply equally if it's on the street or whether it's on a freeway like down at Diamond Way? I mean,
yeah. So we didn't define bike lane in this section. We didn't feel that was a necessary thing because it is defined in well, we actually were going to define it in the Title 12, but we aren't looking at that right now, but we may want to discuss an additional definition.
For purposes of what's going to be changing in this section of the code, bike lanes will refer to specifically what we're talking about that we have down currently on Diamond Parkway that may be expanded to other places in the city. A protected lane for bikes that is not appropriate for motor vehicles.
The Sharo markings are shared use markings where the bicycles are sharing that space with vehicles. And so we're not going to prohibit vehicles from using that space. But like what we have planned for Armour Road from Fayette to Ozark, that is a dedicated space for bicycles where they're not sharing that space with cars. Okay. Or like on Diamond Parkway, that's not shared space. So the prohibition on parking or driving for vehicles in a bike lane would not apply to that.
Well, I got one more question. Like down there at Diamond Parkway, I mean, this is a 10 or 12 foot wide bicycle path. It's going to dump out onto 16th Street, which there's no way that we're going to be able to carry on that wide of bicycle path. It seems to me like it might have been, if we'd have looked at it a little closer to where we seen what was downstream, you know, it might have made a difference upstream. But maybe someday we'll always have these bike paths all over the city, but I don't see it right now.
On Diamond Parkway, that's for two-way traffic. So that is recommended, that it is wider where you're accommodating the bikes in each direction. And bike facilities are usually narrower where they're providing one-way traffic. Like on Armour Road, that won't be, those bike lanes won't be 10 feet wide because they will be carrying, there's one on each side to carry traffic in one direction.
I think it's just a comment on that. I think as a bicyclist, you understand that there are some places that you have to adapt and use less space, and other places that are a little more user-friendly or bicycle-friendly. The other thing I would say is that, like, if I was going to go out biking with my daughter, I would take her to Diamond Parkway, and bike along there. I wouldn't take her on 16th. So I'm okay with just that area. It's much safer for families, if you want to go out and go biking.
Yeah, but if you're gonna do this for transportation, and I guess that's what we're trying to do, I mean, you just can't go back up and down Diamond Parkway and get
Right.
anywhere.
I was
you know.
thinking more for fame, but you're right. I think it's both. I think it's bicycling for recreation and it's bicycling for transportation. And just as a bicyclist, I would tell you that I know that once I get off there and I go on 16th, I only have so much room, so you don't go, 2 people wide or whatever. You just, line up.
Chief?
Any place that we can create a protected bike lane benefits everyone, the bicyclists and the motorists as well. So where we can build them, I think there is value in doing so in terms of safety. However, we cannot have bike lanes all over town. You're right, we can't do it. So in those areas where we don't have bike lanes, things like sharrows to keep the motorists alert that there may be bicycles out there, coupled with some of the changes that we've made in the laws here, puts responsibility not only on those driving cars and trucks, but also on the bicyclists to make sure that they do what is appropriate to keep that shared space as safe as possible. So I think we can't have dedicated bike lanes everywhere, but where we can build them, I think it's beneficial. And where we can't have them, I think these ordinances help spell out the expectations for everyone.
Yeah, and I would just add that the type of bike facility that you put down is really dependent on the adjacent context and the context of the street. So in a case where it's too narrow to put a bike lane, there are other ways to make that area more inviting. And so that's where good planning comes into play, and kind of national best practice in terms of design guidelines is now available. And so I'm encouraged to see the city really moving forward on a lot of those key issues. So so just to add to the great things that the chief and
Well,
Steve
yeah,
mentioned.
I noticed down there on Howell, we've got a bike lane going north that's close to the curb. And then going south, it's out in the street because there's parking allowed on that side of the street. So we've got two-way traffic there. But now, like on 16th down there, are we gonna have a bike lane on each side of it, or are we just gonna have one that is a one-way thing, or?
On 16th, we have made a budget request to work with the road district to add bike lanes.
Right.
We are anticipating that that's a one-way bike lane on each side of the road, but we haven't done any work with an engineer to identify how wide that would be, because you all haven't approved the budget for next year. That would be a next year project. I would anticipate that it's a bike lane that's 5 to 8 feet, depending on the roadway width, on each side of the road.
On one side?
On each side. It's one way in each direction, just like the vehicular traffic.
It's a protected lane.
I don't know.
Chief?
The sharrows that you see currently on 16th Avenue, the white bicyclist with the arrows,
We have just by I-35 to connect to Lynn. They're not on 16.
Okay. But where you see sharrows around town does not designate a protected bike lane.
Right, yeah.
That's just an awareness thing. So I think right now, you can get on a bike and ride anywhere you want to in town as long as you follow the laws. So there's not really a protected bike lane anywhere except the one that currently exists on Diamond Parkway. And I think that, based upon what I understand of the planning, there may be more moving into the future, but I don't want us to start saying that we've got the bike lanes that we're talking about here are anything more than what currently exists on Diamond Parkway at this time. It's simply, we've got a lot of sharrows around town to help keep motorists aware.
Okay, well. Yeah,
Thank you for the definitions on the sharrows and the protected bike lanes. Just your thoughts as far as bikes on the sidewalks, so that was one of the sections here. What are your all's feelings on that? When I first saw that bikes, being allowed on the sidewalks, I was like, that seems dangerous, but we were talking about children before the meeting as well. So can you kind of tell, I know we don't have an ordinance, we have an ordinance now that stops them from riding in the business district downtown on the sidewalks, and that this ordinance or this change in the procedure policy would be to allow them to do that now? Is it just like to access the businesses, or can you get into that a little more?
Yeah, so the thought we had there was that because of the nature of the proposed bike lanes on Armour Road, those bike lanes will ultimately end as you get into the heart of downtown, and you're gonna, with a protected bike lane where there's actually a physical barrier between the motorists and so it's not just paint, it's actually a physical barrier. That's going to attract families. It's going to attract, so like the bike lane you see on Diamond Parkway. That's a facility type that attracts families and users who wouldn't normally get out on a street and bike. And so what you're going to end up seeing is folks getting into downtown, and the bike lane ends, at least for the time being. And so, we didn't want to completely prohibit a 6-year-old child riding with their family from continuing to ride on that bike. And so rather than outright prohibit it, we felt it was a better practice to basically say you can ride on the sidewalk, but you have to yield to pedestrians. You have to ride at a safe speed, and basically be super careful. And so we outlined some ways that would be just defined there. So again, it was really to put the onus on. It was really to kind of give at least that option and not ban a young child, as for example, from
Okay.
riding on the sidewalk.
Chief,
We
you're okay
also
with that?
know that we have bicyclists who are going to destinations downtown. Like you can see them, parked on the sidewalks, like in front of Colony. We do want people on their bikes to come downtown and spend money and enjoy, destinations. So we need to make it practical for them to get there.
Okay, thank you for spelling that out. And just one other question, in the avenues or whatever, I know that isn't part of this discussion, just for my reference, for riding bikes, what's the ordinance there? Is it riding in the street or riding on the sidewalk, or is there really not a ordinance?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I follow the question.
Like like where we live back in the avenues, I know that's not part of this discussion, but as far as the ordinance there, are people allowed to ride bicycles on the sidewalks there in the avenues as well?
Oh, they're allowed to ride on the sidewalks and the avenues today.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask the question that way. I got one or two questions. And that is, say out there on Armour Road, if a car is riding down the street and there's no bicyclists around, then that car would be all right to be riding in the bicycle lane?
Today?
No, after the ordinance, under this proposed ordinance. The car would not be allowed to ride.
it'd be a protected lane. It won't have room for the car. if it's a protected
I mean,
lane,
just part of the car.
You mean the Sharrow?
I mean, if a car kind of drifts over into the bike lane,
Yeah.
there's no bikes there, is what you're asking.
Under this ordinance, and it would be illegal for the car to do so.
Correct. Yeah, if there's a bike lane there, this would prohibit someone from driving a vehicle, or a motorcycle or what we call a motorized bicycle in that
Even
bike
though
lane.
there is no bicyclists around for.
Correct, only for the purpose of crossing or making a turn, but driving straight, no.
What about when there's snow on the ground, on the pavement?
how many bicycles out there?
There's not gonna be, but that doesn't mean that the vehicle's not illegal.
No, regardless of the weather.
Fred, as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, when I looked at the plans, when you had all the plans laid out for Armor Road, there's gonna be a barrier, and then there's gonna be the parallel parking and like a barrier I saw to the bike lane. So it's gonna be really designated and be really hard to drive into.
Most of our plans, yes. Now,
'Cause there's
is
like-
it impossible?
But there's like
No.
like a metal barrier from what I saw on the plan, so I don't think that's gonna be an issue there, because there's physical barrier between that and a car.
There'll be signs put up there, vehicular traffic is not permitted in this area, because, for example, when you go to Price Chopper, and you turn left there off of North Oak, there's a long area of white stripe road there on the right-hand side, and you're not supposed to drive in that, but on the other hand, people always do. Not always, but there's signs there saying it's prohibited, so we'll have a sign up like that.
Well, you telling me that going down Howell, going north, a car is not allowed in that bike lane?
Those aren't bike lanes, those are shared, the Sharrow markings are shared use markings.
Okay.
That's not considered a bike lane.
Okay.
That's a shared lane.
But, and then the only place that a car can't go is if it's a dedicated bike lane that is protected.
Dedicated bike lane, period.
With a wall or pylons or something like that.
No, sir, it might be a line. It might be a solid line on the street that might be protected. Go ahead.
As this evolves, I mean, we're in the infancy of bike lanes here in North Kansas City, and right now what we've currently got is a protected bike lane. What I would hope that we can do as much as possible is create more protected bike lanes, once again, for the safety of everyone. And in a protected bike lane situation, Councilman Stephan, the chances of a car getting into that area accidentally is pretty slim. And if they choose to drive down through there, then we'll deal with them and they can go visit with Judge Fuller. If it's a situation where there is not a protected bike lane, in other words, no curb or pylons exist, but we have created what is a clearly visible bike lane on the roadway, not a Sharrow, but a clearly identified bike lane,
Okay.
then in those situations, it would be against the law to drive in that area. Now, if there's snow on the ground and you can't see the bike lane, then it falls back to the reasonable actions and the discretion of the officer that might encounter somebody as to whether there was a knowing violation of the law or someone just wandered over there because they didn't realize that was a bike lane. So you've got some officer discretion that comes into play in that situation. But this thing's going to continue to grow through North Kansas City, and as it does, if we have unprotected bike lanes, I still don't think we'll let people drive in them, even if there's not a bike there, because it's going to create a problem somewhere down the road. It's just a piece of the roadway that belongs to bicycles, and we make sure that there's plenty of asphalt next to it for the cars and trucks to get by without interfering with that bike lane.
As long as we have the room, I'll go along with that, but like that going down Armor Road here, by the time you get past Fayette, we just don't have a whole lot of room down there.
And that's one of the reasons, if I may, on the issue of bicycles on sidewalks in the central business district. I thought about that one long and hard because of the situation that it was going to create. However, to some of the points that Eric made here tonight, putting bicycles on the sidewalk is a better option than putting bicycles on that section of Armor Road in particular, and even Swift to a certain extent because of the angled parking. It is incumbent on the bicyclist to ride at a safe speed and to yield to pedestrians on that sidewalk. So if we've got someone that's not doing what they're supposed to, we will address that issue with that particular cyclist. But it, like I said, I thought about that one long and hard, but in the long run, I think what we're recommending here makes more sense.
I got knocked down in front of Le Mans Bakery by a bicycle.
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Well, when we change this ordinance, we can do something about it, sir.
You done?
Yeah.
I got a couple. One's on definition. We went by definitions of a bicycle pretty fast there before I couldn't read it.
Sure.
Now, bicycle means two wheels, I know. But what about the trikes now?
Yeah, so that was another one of the, I would classify it under the emerging technologies. You're seeing what's called a recumbent bicycle that has three wheels. We incorporated that, so basically it says anything that you know, looks like a bicycle, has a chain, pedals, and that sort of thing. So we did include the option of a three-wheeled bicycle or a
They're,
tricycle.
they're about 3 foot wide in the back,
Yeah.
not the reclining ones you're talking
Right,
about,
right.
but the other ones. And the other thing is the sidewalk downtown. I prefer to get off and walk the bike downtown. And for the reason at Mackin Park, first of all, there's signs, unless they've taken them down since I quit walking so much. No bicycles at all on the walking trail. Nobody obeys it, and you'll get run over by those little kids you're talking about. And I don't dislike little kids. I got grandkids. And what are you going to do to a little kid? The cops ain't going to do anything to a little kid. They're going to run over you. And I don't think the business people would like the bikes being ridden in like the 300 block and 200 block of Armour. I really don't. Those kids don't always behave. The adults don't always behave, but I just think you're looking for a lot of dissatisfied walkers down there. My opinion. Now, all the bike trails, I'm all for and everything, but riding on the bike, telling everybody it's okay to ride on the sidewalks downtown, no. I don't even like it in the avenues. I've had to get out and walk in the street. So, which I don't care down there, but I don't like it downtown.
And I completely respect your opinion and the opinion of the council in terms of this area. What we may want to think about is redefining the area of downtown where, right now, the central business district is a pretty big area. And we may want to rethink where if the choice of the council is to limit bicycles on sidewalks in certain areas, we may want to take a block-by-block approach to that, decide if we want to scale down the area where bicycles are prohibited. We'll do it. Police department will do whatever you guys want to do, but I just think that was some of the philosophy that I put into this when I told you what I thought about the downtown area. But we may want to rethink how much area we restrict the bicycles in as far as being on sidewalks.
Now, as far as if I have two choices of riding in the street or on the sidewalk, I'd take the sidewalk naturally on that part of town because it's too dangerous with the type of parking we have down there, if nothing else. But I just soon have the third option where they can ride so far and then there be a sign that you walk your bikes. That's just something to throw out there for people to think about.
If I could just add one other thought, it's completely at the council's discretion, where to prohibit cyclists. In addition to the scenarios that you've described, I think another part of our thought process was, I think it comes back to safety, right? Who is going to be riding or walking out there, and what package of ordinances create the safest environment possible? And so I think part of the thought process is if you are only legally able to ride a bike on traffic and the only street that's available is a busy main street with angled parking behind you, and we anticipate that there may be younger and inexperienced cyclists riding, what suite of code language can we put together that makes that as safe as possible? And so that's just another factor in our consideration.
To, to Councilmember Stewart's point, huh? Do you need to go? I was just gonna mention that I agree with how it's written today, leaving the option open. I mean, at some point, if we do have problems downtown, and we wanna have an additional ordinance in a certain area that says you must walk your bike, I think that I would be open to considering that in the future. I like the work you've done. I was happy with the results, so I'm okay with how it's written today.
All right. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Certainly appreciate the work on this, especially when you address or bring an increased awareness to vulnerable users. I mean, I think that's big for us, as well as the central business district usage. I'm guilty of it myself. I myself have rode down. Now, I'm not the one that knocked over the mayor, but I have ridden down there a couple times, especially when I've been with my kid on his trike. You know, like you addressed, two options. Well, I'm not riding down Armour Road right now with my kid in his trike, so we have taken that route a couple times. And, you know, there's responsibility to the bike riders, you know. If there were people we would have got off and walked, I would have let him ride, but I would have walked my bike. So definitely appreciate the option of having that open until, you know, we see what happens, then we can.
I agree with the seeming majority of thought along this line. You know, this is a growing process. It's something that's not going to be cut in stone tonight or tomorrow. And as we see things developing, we're going to fine tune it, massage it up a little bit, one way or the other. So, but I'm happy with it.
One more, this might have been outside your scope of work on this audit, but when it comes to dockless bikes and dockless scooters.
So how bike share operations, as many of you may be aware, we at Bike Walk AC own and operate the bike share system. So thank you guys for your support and that and bringing bike share to North Kansas City. So that's something that we're definitely aware of. This new technology where a bike share bike doesn't have to be returned to the actual station. So right now you have 3 stations up here, and so every bike has to be returned to that station into the trip. There is new technology now that allows a user to lock up their bike at a different location, and there's growing need for guidance and best practice on that. And I think that Kansas City will be, as a region, will be seeing this technology coming. But that's something that we have our fingers on the pulse of. But as you mentioned, it was a little outside of this particular scope. That would be regulated under a different title in the municipal code. But it is something absolutely that we are looking at. I think that this sets up the option for motorized, like there's these little scooters that are basically really low speed scooters, so they're shared as well. So just like a bike share bike, it's a scooter that has a very low powered motor that can only take a person 15 to 20 miles an hour. So it is mentioned in here. I think that sets up well. The electric assist part of bike share that's coming as well. So those two things are kind of the areas that this really addresses, but not necessarily the regulation of those. So, you know, where can they be docked? Where can they just be, you know, strewn about on the sidewalk or not? How many of them can be unloaded into the city? So those are all things I think for another conversation. But it's something to keep our ears to the ground on.
So kind of like a next step, I mean, would be the next logical.
Yes.
Do you have any timeline on when they're coming? Well, I saw Line Bike.
There's
posted
some
an
rumors.
opening.
It's really difficult to say. But yeah, we definitely need to be thinking about it.
Hit on that.
And just as a reminder, we do have an operating agreement with Bike Share for the operation of those in the city. We would anticipate that the addition of dockless Bike Share would require an amendment to the operating agreement. And the same thing if anyone was going to start up scooters, the dockless scooters, we would need to have an operating agreement with those people, or it would need to be an amendment to our existing operating agreement before those entered North Kansas City.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the current there is a requirement if you were going to operate a bike share system in North Kansas City that requires that agreement. And so if another company if Lime Bike wants to operate another company that runs these things, if they were to come into North Kansas City, they would have to have an agreement with you.
I guess my concern would be though is that they pick it up in Kansas City and they bring it.
They bring
here,
it
and we're
back,
not
right,
ready, and they're
right.
just dropping it here.
And then that
They're
puts
dropping it here. I believe, I haven't discussed this with Chief Beamer, that would become abandoned property in the right-of-way that we could pick
That's what-
up
okay.
and dispose of.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Well, any more questions?
No, I'm satisfied.
All right, well, it would be our intention then to, at a meeting here in your not distant future, bring the code changes that have been discussed tonight for you for your formal consideration.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here.
All right, sir,
Eric?
shall I? So the second item on tonight's agenda is a proposal by the North Kansas City Business Council. They'd like to talk about the annual city funding that the city has provided to the Business Council and request a upward movement on that. And second, there is a new initiative that they are asking the council to support on, for the most part, a one-time basis. So as a reminder, for various reasons, I thought there was a need to schedule both of these items on tonight's agenda, knowing that it might go past 7 o'clock. It is legal for your work session to go past 7 o'clock if you feel there's enough discussion to cause that, and we can always start after 7 o'clock for the regular meeting. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn over the matter to Rich Groves, the Executive Director of the North Kansas City Business Council, to make a presentation.
Is this on? It is. Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about what the Business Council does and what it's planning to do. Let's start with a little bit of refresher, perhaps for some of you, or maybe new for some of you, but the Business Council is a 501c6 organization, a member-based nonprofit corporation, and it's been here since 1994. And some of you may remember there was a Chamber of Commerce until the early 90s, and it ended up merging with what's now called the Northland Regional Chamber. And so then there was a gap of a year or two. And in that gap, 1993, there was a lot of water, near floods, and the mayor became aware that she no longer had a really good communication vehicle with the business community, and then she urged some business leaders to form what became the North Kansas City Business Council. You want to advance it? I have with me today, tonight, Jack Fry, who's one of our executive committee on the board, and he's going to present part of the presentation tonight. Can you hear me okay? Is this loud enough? You're good. Well, I'll come back to these three words probably several times, but our goals are to support, inform, and connect, particularly the members of the Business Council, but in general, all the businesses in North Kansas City that we can reach. And we have a very small staff, myself, and now we have Paula Brooks, who's the Member Services and Events Coordinator. She is replacing Jennifer Keller, who resigned about 3 weeks ago. Jennifer did a great job for us for 6+ years, and she has some opportunities to travel overseas with her husband on his business trips and some other things, and so she took this opportunity to leave. We also engage some other people to help us do certain functions. Rose Brown does all of our accounting support. Matt Maynor, who's here tonight, helps us with social media and website support. And Chris Teague does our newsletter layouts and the business directory design. And hopefully you've got one of these in front of you tonight. This is the new business directory, hot off the press. So we do have an executive committee of people from, 5 people: Ryan Koppas from Country Club Bank, John Miller Jr. from StoreSafe and iWorks, Jerry Hoosman from the hospital, Jack from Fry and Associates, and Dina James is the immediate past president. And we have a great cross-section of board members. You can see the list here of the other 15 of the total 20 that we have. Quite a cross-section. We've got Tnemec and Hunt Midwest and Hellsburg and the school district, the hospital, WSK Architects, NT Realty. You can see the spread there. You may have wondered, how do we finance what we do? And we have a fairly modest budget. Membership dues comprise about 38%. Events and activities and whatever we can gain from doing those things is about 45%. And then, thank you very much, the city helps us also at about a percentage of about 17%. Yeah, go ahead. Just maybe this is a little whining and moaning as a leader of a nonprofit organization, and a member-based organization, but it's increasingly a challenge to attract and retain members. I think we do pretty well in holding our own. We provide a lot of services, but we do have one interesting restriction. Our bylaws say that our members must have a physical presence in North Kansas City. And that's unlike any chamber of commerce that I've ever heard of. They're usually area or regional or something like that. Anybody who wants to join can join. And so, unfortunately, about once a week, I have to tell a business, no, I'm sorry, I can't. You can't be a member. You're welcome to come to some of our activities, but if you don't have a physical presence here. When I first came here in 2010, it was a recession, and a lot of businesses reduced staff, and that affected their ability to participate. And it's always a concern, a budgetary concern of a small business. Can I afford 200 or 375 or whatever the dues might be? I guess kind of related to the reduced staffing is a lot of these businesses have not added back staffing, and they're just pretty busy with their business, which is a good thing. Some of them have, and this is a good thing too for them, established customers. They're not really too interested in networking. That's not a big appeal to them. And with the internet and other types of organizations, there's a huge access to all kinds of industry information that they might have in the past depended on a chamber of commerce to help with. And I put inaccurate perceptions about membership. Some people, maybe it's an excuse, but they say, I don't have time to go to any of your activities. Well, I think we'll show in a minute or two some of the other things we do that we'd hope that we could break down that barrier. As I mentioned, we do get about 17% of our income this past year in our budget from the city, and we do thank you for that. And it's understood that the money that we get from the city goes for things that benefit all the businesses of North Kansas City, such as the quarterly printed newsletter that goes to about 1,100 businesses, 1,100 addresses in North Kansas City, to every business that we can identify. It does pay for our database, our Chamber Master software license fee, which enables us to do all the communication we do and keep track of all the businesses. And it pays for our Matt's work with social media and website updates. The Christmas tree program, it takes care of those costs, any farmers market expenses, and the videos that we've done. And I hope that you have seen the videos that we have done. One of them, well, they're both still on the website. The one about places to play, please raise your hand if you've seen that. We're really pleased about that, and thank you for your funding on that last year. And it's still on our website. We've got a 52-second version of it all about places to play. It's pretty entertaining and fast-moving. And a couple of years before that, we did one on a good place to have a business, and it's still on the website. It's just short of 2 minutes, and it's a good video, and it was done a lot with a drone, and so it's got some views of North Kansas City that most of us have never seen. And some other things we do, I guess I want to really dwell on the top one for a minute, connect people who have problems to people with solutions. I get the most satisfaction out of this when one of our members comes to us and said, I'm having trouble with this. Who do I go to? How can I get help? Sometimes it's with the city, and Eric and his staff are just super responsive, and it's nice to know who to direct them to for specific problems. Sometimes with other businesses, sometimes it's out of the area entirely. But that's one of the things that we're able to do. And then each week, each city council meeting, I think you're aware that I'm here and I take notes and I write a brief recap. And this is the single thing I hear the most good things from our members about, that they can get somewhat informed about what's happening in the city without having to be here. We do a major recognition of new and expanded businesses and quality of life projects in September. And the last couple of years, we've had at least 24 of those, and I expect to have another 24 this year. It's just pretty exciting. A quality of life example would be, this year would be the Diamond Parkway. That's a tremendous project. We help to invent and still are a sponsor of Northland Coffee Connect, which happens every Wednesday morning. It's a great networking thing at iWorks, and it attracts some businesses and people from North Kansas City, but some who aren't. And this acquaints them with North Kansas City, and there have been many cases where that has led to them deciding to set up their business in North Kansas City, maybe at iWorks, but maybe other places too. And thank you, several of you who come to our monthly luncheons. We try to have informative, useful programs. And I'll mention First Friday Coffee because this week we have one on Friday at Life Unlimited, which is the building where my office is. Used to be called Concern Care. So if you can come, please do at 7:30 on Friday morning. And then we do some things that are both fun and fundraising. We do the golf tournament in June, which we have named for Mickey Finn, and we do, and a portion of the money that comes from that goes for scholarships to North Kansas City High School seniors. We do a holiday reception and auction in late November, and some of you have attended that, and it's an important fundraiser for us. We offer a night at the K, and I think we had about 90 people participated in this last in May. And in just a couple of weeks, we're going to have a trivia championship at Harris. So that's addressing the things that we do and have been doing. And Jack's going to talk about an initiative we have related to destination attractions.
So, yeah, North Kansas City is evolving and changing. I graduated from the high school here in 1989. My dad graduated in 1962. So I've been around the area a lot, and it's changed dramatically in those periods of time, especially since 1994 when the Business Council really started moving forward. We worked a lot with the city developing. We did initiatives with the city, dressing up, doing grants for businesses to look nicer, really to dress up the city. And I think that went a long ways towards bringing in other types of businesses that start to see the city as an attractive place to have a business. And that really kicked into the retail entertainment side of it. So that's something that we've started to recognize on the Business Council in the last couple of years. That's one of the reasons why we thought it was really important to do the video last year, to really show everybody what's going on in North Kansas City. Because, you know, there's a lot of businesses that have popped up over the last few years. You've got Cinder Block, Screenland Armor 10 years ago when it popped up. And they're starting to kind of draw a lot of people into the area. So what's the function of the Business Council in this matter, or what have we done a good job or what we haven't done a good job with, is really supporting the entertainment part of it. We've always done a really good job of supporting the professional businesses, but entertainment and attraction type destinations need to be supported in a different way. So that's why we're talking about that specifically in what we're going to ask for and what we're working for. It's important not just to the businesses, but to the city, because you guys are seeing a good uptick in revenue with some of the sales taxes coming in here, and that's supporting you. That helps you beautify the city more, which helps support the businesses that we're trying to support, and it's also bringing in new and interesting businesses, which we'll talk about in just a second. So what's happening is North Kansas City is getting on the map. And there's one statement that I hear over and over that I thought was great that you put in here, is that we're the best kept secret in the city, which, you know, that's great if you're a Hollywood celebrity dating somebody, but when your business is, that's not such a good thing. You don't want to be the best kept secret. You want to be the thing that everybody knows about. And that is the purpose of the Business Council, is to push that forward as North Kansas City being a place for people to come for entertainment and attractions, not just to get their taxes done, not just to buy, Tenemic products or to bring things to, over to the paper mill or, that's not what it is. It's grown from there, and we need to let people know that to bring in the resources from outside of the city. Gladstone's doing good things, River Market's doing good things, and they're pulling people. We need to pull people in here to support all the new businesses. There's more destinations coming, so it's just getting rolling. The Rabbit Hole is opening up. That's going to bring people in to, especially with a lot of children, a different age group, with a whole different type of attraction than we've had before. Of course, One North will be kicking up, or already is, with Drive, the hotel, the conference center. That's going to bring in all kinds of new people. So when they're here, how do we best show them what are the things to do in the city? And that's where we think the Business Council really needs to step forward, but we need your help in doing that. Now, the other economic impact we see of these businesses coming in is they're attracting other businesses coming into the city. And there's specific stories that we've seen come into it. Olson Engineering consolidated everything into North Kansas City because their employees really liked it here. They like being down here. They like having good places to go for lunch. They like meeting people after work that you can get a really good beer at and have some good conversation, and then be able to move forward, work and play, mixing that together. It's a place for businesses and it's a place to live. SKW was acquired, and McClure Engineering is consolidating. Accent Controls have come in. Par Electric was trying to find a way to work things out. Those are really good stories for the city from an industrial perspective, but that's driven by a lot of the destinations and attraction that make this a great place. And of course, we can't leave out Cerner. I mean, how many people come into the city that are working with Cerner that then can come over here and utilize this and the attractions and the destinations to help keep a lot of the money in the city where it benefits everybody? iWorks is another facility. You're seeing more businesses popping up there, and iWorks is a great facility. They're bringing lots of small businesses in here because of the attractiveness of places they can work with other businesses. But what we're seeing now is those businesses are becoming successful, moving out of iWorks, and because they're in North Kansas City, they're looking for other places in North Kansas City to stay because we have created such a good environment for businesses to be in. So it's very important to strike right now. Number one, you've got momentum going. Things are building, and we need to tell everybody about it and keep people coming in, especially with the new construction going on. There's that little bit of a fear it's going to dilute what's here. So I think it's important that if we get the momentum going as soon as possible to really bring in people looking for entertainment that want to come to Marodi's, let them know, hey, there's a great smoothie shop down the street that you can go to that makes fantastic smoothies out of all fresh fruits, that you really can't get anywhere else. So while you're in North Kansas City, why don't you go over there and, grab a smoothie? So that's what's important right now, to build that up, because new businesses are coming in and we need to get the momentum rolling. And we can't really do that ourselves. We're competing with Power and Light, River Market, Crossroads, Waldo. These entertainment areas exist. Northtown doesn't yet. We need to put it on the map. And to do that, we need your help to be able to accomplish that. One of the things that we're looking to do with your guys' help is, number one, create a new website, which is www.explorenkc.com. It's separate from the Business Council website, and the reason it's separate is because you have to market these things differently. You need to tie together all the entertainment. For example, I go to Power and Light's website sometimes, like if I'm going to a concert down in Arvest or something like that, I'm like, let's go somewhere beforehand and have a nice steak dinner. Where do I go? So you pull those apps up and see what's in the area of these entertainment, and then you go to those. So they have to be advertised in a different way. They have to really stress and show the entertainment value of the city. So when someone's coming to Chicken and Pickle or someone's coming to Screenland Armor and there's other things they want to do in the city, it's an easy way for them to find out what's around them, to keep them in the city, to keep the revenues in the city, and help work with the tax dollars and to support the local businesses. We're going to be linking it from nkc.org, the Business Council website, of course. But, of course, all the businesses putting their information around there will drive a lot of the traffic for it. We've already done a printed and online map with a list of the destination attractions.
It's in your business directory, pages 15 through 18.
And this is something, part of this programming that we want to plant throughout the city. You know, down in Union Station, where they've got little information on where to go in the city, there's nothing there really for entertainment businesses in North Kansas City. So it's a need that we need to work on filling to support the businesses throughout the city. We have the new hotel over here. We need some things to give people so they know where to walk around and different things that they could see. The other goal is to upgrade the app that you currently have that will pinpoint attractions for visitors, so they have an app for mobile use directly. And of course, things change very quickly, so we're always looking for new ways for promotion where any opportunities arise. But now we need to really start with the core basics. We need to build that online. We need to get the businesses putting their information in there and listing it so they can get the exposure all together as a strong unit to raise everybody up. And that's our goal and what we're trying to do with Explore in KC. Rich?
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Jack. Well, we realize at this stage of the year, you're putting the budget together, and Eric is getting all kinds of information, and he's getting, I'm sure, input from the council and the mayor about what should be in the budget. So we're asking, one, for the kind of funding we typically have gotten in the past. In the last couple of years, it's been $27,500, and I explained to you the kinds of things it goes for. We did, when we hired Paula, we upped the hours by about 12 hours from what Jennifer was working. And so we were asking if you would consider going up to 30,000. That's about 1/4 of what we're increasing in salary for that position. Then for the things that Jack just described for the destination attractions, we're hoping that you will also consider helping us support that initiative with the website, the social media, the copy. We'd like to make hundreds, if not thousands, of this map and list. Upgrading the app, and the best estimate we had from the city was 4,000. And then we don't know what other opportunities may arise. So from all of that, we hope that we'll all benefit from more customers, increased city revenue, more businesses, and more residents. Someone pointed out, well, where are you going to put those more residents? So I think the demand will force us to advance one more, to do one of the things that the city's master plan is. So we think what we do and what we're asking to do is very consistent with the master plan. And that second bullet, expanding the population, I think the more people you expose to North Kansas City, the more want to consider living here. And we need to find ways to expand that. Yeah. So I guess the bottom line of all this is that we think we've been good stewards of the funds entrusted to us, and we want to do more. And so we're hopeful that we can do that. Be open to any questions you might have.
I've always been a big supporter of the Business Council. I think you people do a very great job. Rich, you're high in my estimation as far as your leadership goes and getting things worked out and doing a lot of things here for the city. We are in exciting times. This is a time, I think, that we need to take some action in that direction because, as Mr. Fry said, we're on a kind of the bubble here to move forward. I think that your request is rather modest considering the things that you're attempting to do. You've never come down here in the years that I've been on the council and asked for the world. It's always been a pretty reasonable request. So without really thinking the things through that you're going to do and the ways you're going to do it, I think I could support whatever you folks could need within our budgetary considerations.
Appreciate your support. Thank you.
And I agree with that. In addition to that, when I go to another city, I look exactly for this website. Something that says explore whatever city I've not been to. So it's easy, it's what they do in other cities, it's what people look for. And I think the time is absolutely ripe for it, and I'm completely in agreement with this.
I think one thing we didn't stress enough is that we've created this as an umbrella promotion for all areas of the city. We think that's important for the Business Council to take that responsibility.
thank you for this information and kind of an in-depth of what you do at the Business Council. I think you do promote the businesses really well. Couple of questions. As far as the additional funding, the 20,000, is that going to come from Eric? Probably can answer this, or somebody gaming, convention and tourism, or is that gaming, or what, do we know?
Well, I hadn't decided that, sir. I
Haven't
was waiting for
decided.
your direction. It could be either. Actually, it could be either.
Okay.
Either. I think it would qualify from either fund.
Okay.
Since you bring that up, may I just ask a quick question of Mr. Groves? Just, I noticing the slide where, yes, the $20,000, that, which you and I have talked about, you've indicated you consider that a one-time. Some of those expenses might be continuous, might they not? So, I mean, could it be anticipated that if the council approves this expenditure this year, that you might come back next year and say, well, we need continual funding to keep the app up, to keep the social media up? Is that a possibility?
I suppose it's a possibility, but our intention at this point is this would be a one-time thing, and that the more that does to help us have more membership and the more financial stability, sustainability, we'd hope that we could cover those things on our own going forward with your normal support.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you, sir, for letting me ask that question.
Oh, no problem. And the only other question that I had, and I'm glad you asked that question, so, the other question that I had was, as far as the entertainment district, at first, you hear different things, and I'm assuming this entertainment district, I mean, I've heard it referred to as River North. I mean, is that what it's being referred to? And, if so, is that going to cause confusion? I'm glad that it's coming under the Business Council, but, and we just got to be careful, what we talked about last time about, not becoming a Westport and managing our successfully, I guess. So, can you expound on that?
I probably won't say much because I believe they're going to do, a representative from River North is going to make a little presence.
That's correct. Yes, Mr. Groves is right. So there is, as you say, Councilmember Clevenger, another group of businesses in North Kansas City that is going under the name River North, that is also trying to market us as a destination city. Their effort is, they are a separate organization from the Business Council. We have invited them, after you've finished with the Business Council night, we have invited a couple of their representatives to also come up and talk to you about what they're doing and the kind of activities that they're working on as part of that effort
Well, I
that they're
guess
in.
a question could be posed to them at that time about.
That'd be
whether
my
or not we can-
suggestion.
At the Business Council, okay.
But that's a completely separate organization.
It
They
is.
don't partner at all with the business council.
They are not coming as a
Which is a
partnership
question
tonight, and
themselves.
my understanding is they're not asking for funding either tonight, but they would like the opportunity to talk to you about what they're doing.
Thank you.
Well, have we got a consensus?
Am I seeing consensus from the council that you support this and would like to see it in the budget if at all possible?
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
understood. If that's all for the Business Council as far as questions or anything, then I would then like to turn to Joe Gower and Kaylee Rangel from River North to come and take a few minutes to talk to you about the effort that they're involved in to make us a destination city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, my name's Joe Gower, and I got involved with this deal here a couple of months ago. A little background on me: I've lived in North Kansas City now, be 12 years here this month, and I think, like a lot of the people who've spoken here tonight, I've seen a lot of changes that have gone on, a lot of new places that have popped up, and a changing level of interest in the city, and all of the potential that it has here. A couple years back, started up a pub crawl with Jennifer Keller of the Business Council. We got together, kind of started planning some stuff out. it sort of shifted away and became more of a thing that was run by the committee of the bar and restaurant owners themselves, and in that time got to know a lot of the people who have started up new tap rooms and coffee shops and places like that around here. A lot of the reasons why there's a large swell of interest in North Kansas City for young people. So a couple years after that, Pine Path joined up with the Swift Mile, and the next natural progression of that in knowing and working with the bar and restaurant owners was something that had been kind of tossed around on the side for a while, was sort of getting together a group, like an organized group of them, that could work, whether hand in hand with the business council or just kind of their own separate thing, and being able to have put together a board of bar owners and restaurant owners and people in the industry who kind of get those industries and understand what their needs are, and be able to lobby on their behalf with the city, with the business council, work with a lot of the existing groups in town, and then be able to showcase it online. That was one of the big things with River North. We originally came to the business council to sort of see how this could all fit together as one big initiative. The one sort of thing that we had to kind of separate off from was the larger mandate of the business council, in that, and I think a lot of this will be reflected on the website too, is that their job is to show you everything that's going on in North Kansas City. So that's One North, that's Harris Casino. It's a lot of things that fall outside of what our scope is, which is to focus on this corridor where you've seen a lot of the small, locally owned, a lot of them locally owned by people who live in North Kansas City now, shops and restaurants and coffee shops and bars and breweries, all those places. Really just kind of carve out what that corridor looks like. So since then, we have gotten 23 businesses now involved in our group, which it's got a paid annual membership that's going to help us put together this website, which is most of the way done. One of the big things we had to do was we went around the last couple months, got some professional photography taken of each of the places, inside and out, kind of put together a website that we feel like kind of has sort of that neighborhood district flavor to it, something like you would see in a Waldo or Crossroads or River Market, but just something very simple and clear cut. And we're not looking to compete with the business council website. If anything, we'd like to be linked from it or recognized as a district within the larger umbrella picture of everything that's going on in North Kansas City. I guess the reasoning for that is you look at something like One North that's going to pop up on the east side of the freeway. They have their own bars, their own restaurants, their own coffee shops. They will have a website that will just cater to that district. I mean, it's a great thing for North Kansas City that they're coming to town. I think it's sort of a rising tide type of situation, but you could have people who are staying in hotels down there that, if you can walk right out your door and go to Old Chicago Pizza or grab a cup of coffee at Starbucks, you're probably just going to maybe do that. I feel like there's a lot of people that are a little more adventurous than that. They want to know where the locally owned shops are, where the locally owned, where to get the local flavor of town. And we want to make sure that we could create a group that represents the owners of those establishments.
And I'm Kaylee. I'm the executive director of River North. I am also a homeowner in North Kansas City. I'm the general manager at Screenland Armor. I'm very involved with the local businesses around here. And that's just kind of our goal, is to showcase specifically, you guys are all, Kansas City, Kansas City is very passionate specifically about supporting Kansas City businesses that started here, that continued to expand here, that the owners have always lived in the city, that want to make the city great, and that's why they've put all their time and effort into creating this local business unique to the city. That's what we want to showcase, is the people that live in North Kansas City or live just outside of North Kansas City that have found this little pocket of, this little gem located within the Kansas City metro area, that want to add their own flair to make it a unique place for visitors and residents.
I think it's a great idea. We've talked a lot about wanting to attract people across the river. And the people who live across the river, we want to come here. They like names for areas.
Yes,
They're
yeah.
really, that's really a big thing to them. So
And
if they
that's-
can say, I'm going to River North, as opposed to listing one of the 23 establishments
Mm-hmm.
specifically, that's a really big thing. Plus, when they build the hotels down here eventually, there'll be Cerner people coming and staying in those hotels.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And they will be more adventurous. They will not want Starbucks. They will want to find the destination
Mm-hmm.
place to go. And if it's clearly identified prior to those places being built, that's going to be a huge boon to our city, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's something, as someone who works in a local business and who also frequents all the local businesses around here, it's something you always hear the business owners struggling with, where people that are south or even just in the River Market don't realize that it's literally a 5-minute drive over the bridge to North Kansas City, which is this great small district of all these locally owned businesses that all these owners have, poured their heart and soul into, and people really appreciate that, but for some reason across the river seems like, 45 minutes away, but really it's not very far at all. So we're hoping that district name will help people realize it's a really small pocket of area that's way closer than you ever realized, that has all these awesome local businesses in it.
Sorry, I have a hard time getting over there. So I like the concept, I think. I mean, I love the businesses, of course. I'm a supporter of almost all these, I think. I want to make sure we don't have conflicting brands.
Yes.
So North Kansas City, we're small, and we are, there has been a lot of conflicting information about North Kansas City for a long time. It's been very hard to kind of make sure we're all on the same page about what we're called. We all refer to us as Northtown, but officially we're North Kansas City, and, we're not Kansas City North, and, there's just a lot of brand recognition that we've been working very hard on in the council for the last 4 or 5 years. I want to make sure we're not conflicting with that, watering that down. I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're trying to accomplish. I think I'm okay, need some time to process.
Yeah.
But I think I'm okay with the district idea, as long as the district is, in line with sort of our city's brand. So that's kind of a general comment.
Yeah.
Not asked to vote today, so I don't have to vote.
Right.
on anything, but just sort of absorbing the information.
And we definitely understand the naming of, I've lived here just over a year now. I bought a house in North Kansas City proper, and so many of my friends think, oh, yeah, I also live in North Kansas City, but they live in
Yeah, no,
Kansas
they
City
don't.
North. Yeah. So we definitely don't, that's definitely not our intention. Our intention is just to focus on the specifically locally owned businesses that operate within the small pocket of North Kansas City. So we're hoping that eventually people see River North District and they know that that's where they can go to see any business that's a grassroots business that's Kansas City bred.
I think both presentations tonight really showed that. We got a lot going on right now. There's a lot of great things going on. So, look forward to seeing that continue on. I kind of see where you're coming from too. And also having the easily identifiable name, I could see kind of separate out a little bit, give at least some separate identity. So I'm hoping that that's what'll come out of this. So, thanks for the presentation.
A lot of these businesses belong to the council.
Yep, we have a lot of crossover members.
Yeah, there is, and one of the things that we're hoping for too is that I think there's some businesses that felt like they were kind of lone wolfing it, and they knew that there was a business council here, and for whatever reason they didn't feel like it was for them. But through working with the business council and then having an organized group of our own that we're working with, we can do a little better to educate them on what the business council does and say, hey, here's what we're doing for you. It's a pretty, we ask for, it's a $250 a year member due. And that basically helps us to fund the website, to fund some of the other digital things that we're going to be doing, possibly some digital billboards and merchandise. But it's a pretty narrow scope. It's mostly for marketing and then them being able to organize as a group. If there's any kind of instance where they feel like they need to go to the city and say, anything having to do with ordinances or anything like that that might be affecting business, just letting them know that they have an organized voice in this town. Those are the big things. But as far as a wide-reaching amount of services in getting them in touch with the city and what the city can do for them. The business council is that's where some education needs to come into what they're able to do for them.
Mayor.
Do you have just a quick question, do you have this is a very specific question about membership, but you said these businesses were members of River North, and they also likely are, many of them or most of them are members of the business council. Is there some sort of a joint membership where you could partner with the business council and offer a reduced rate for those businesses who join both?
That's something that our two groups are still in conversation about. We've been kind of going back and forth about what that could look like. But yeah, there's been a couple ideas floated out there that we still need to get on the same page about. Because there's the things we have to balance are we want them to kind of see for themselves, on a trial basis, what those benefits could do for them. But then we also want to be fair to the people paying for the full business council fees and make sure that, there's not this sort of like light
Gotcha.
fee floating around out there.
Yep, okay, good, good.
Well, I'd say work it out.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
All right, so with that, thank you. That concludes tonight's work session, and at this
Okay.
point, I guess I'd ask you what your pleasure is as far as going into the regular session. Would you like to take a little break, or?
Uh-huh.
All right, well, we're ready when you are.
Okay.
All right. Oh, could we have a, thank you.
Let's reconvene at 7:30.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I mean, not to adjourn, but to
We gotta adjourn this meeting.
motion to adjourn.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye. Did you get enough of us?